Hey there, welcome. So, we all learned how to write in school, right? But have you ever really stopped to think about how you were taught? Because it turns out the answer is this surprisingly dramatic story. It's basically a battle between two polar opposite ideas, with the classroom as the battlefield.
And it all boils down to this one central question that has haunted educators for decades. Rules or creativity? Which one do you teach first? Do you start with the rigid mechanics of grammar, or do you just unleash a student's ideas and let them flow? It sounds like a simple question, but oh man, it has a very complicated history.
For years, the answer just swung wildly between these two extremes. On one side, you've got this intense focus on perfect grammatical accuracy, and on the other, a focus on the fluent, natural flow of ideas. It's like everyone was convinced it had to be one or the other, and this back and forth created a constant tug of war for the soul of the writing classroom.
So let's take a look at the first swing of that pendulum, a hard turn towards structure. This era was all about building the perfect sentence, piece by painstaking piece. The thinking at the time, which was really based on behaviorist theories, was simple. If you can master the form, you will master writing.
This approach was called focus on form. You can kind of think of it as the written version of those old-school audio language drills, where you listen and repeat. Students would do something called guided composition, which meant meticulously copying and manipulating sentence structures over and over and over again to basically burn the correct form into their minds.
But here's the thing. It didn't really work. While students got incredibly good at mimicking and repeating correct sentences, they were just awful at creating their own. They could copy, but they couldn't actually produce anything new. This whole method just completely stifled creativity and totally failed to generate original thought. It was, for all intents and purposes, a dead end.
Okay, so realizing that just knowing the form wasn't enough, educators tried to tweak things a bit. This wasn't a total revolution, more like a course correction. The new question became, okay, what if we teach them not just the what, but the why? What if they understood the function of each sentence?
And this led to the focus on function approach. Now, students were explicitly taught that this right here is a topic sentence, and its job is to introduce the main idea. This is a supporting detail. Its job is to give evidence. And this is a concluding sentence. The goal was to build a much deeper understanding of how a text is actually put together.
And this quote just brilliantly sums up the result. Students became total experts on the theory of writing. I mean, they could define every single part of a paragraph, but they still couldn't write one on their own. They were, in effect, walking dictionaries, absolutely full of knowledge, but totally unable to create anything new with it.
So, as you can probably guess, as a direct reaction to all of this stiffness and failure, that pendulum swung, and it swung hard, in the complete opposite direction. This was the creative revolution. It was an attempt to break the chains of structure and finally, unleash the writer within.
The new philosophy was all about creative expression. And the core idea was super simple. It doesn't matter if your grammar is perfect, it doesn't matter if your sentences are a little clunky, just get your ideas onto the page. Self-expression was king, and you could worry about the rules later. Or, maybe not at all.
But this idea of total freedom, it created a massive new problem. By tolerating every little mistake, educators were accidentally reinforcing bad habits. Errors became totally ingrained, and this is a concept known as fossilization, where a mistake is repeated so often that it becomes a permanent fossilized part of how someone writes. Not good.
So now, after swinging from one failed extreme to the other, a few educators started to ask a really radical question. They thought, maybe the problem isn't structure or creativity themselves. I mean, both are obviously essential to good writing, right? What if the real problem was the order? What if they had been teaching the entire thing backwards?
And that simple insight led to the modern approach that most of us are probably familiar with today. It's an attempt to stop that pendulum right in the middle, combining the best parts of both worlds into a logical, really effective sequence. And here is the crucial insight, the big breakthrough. It was realizing we should teach writing in the order the human mind actually creates something, not the order a finished product is presented. You don't start with a perfect sentence, right? You start with a messy idea. The process had to start with creativity, and then you apply the rules to shape it.
This is the writing process. And what's so brilliant about it is how it brings together everything we've just talked about. Step 1, brainstorming. That's just a structured version of the creative expression approach. Step 2, outlining. That's pretty much focus on function, assigning a purpose to each idea. And step 4, editing.
That's focus on form, applying all the rules of grammar and accuracy. It takes all those historical approaches and just puts them in the right order.
So in this model, the rules aren't some cage that restricts your creativity. They're more like guardrails. They give creativity a path to follow, a structure that channels all that energy and prevents it from just flying off into incoherence. It really is the perfect balance.
But here's the final twist in the story. Mastering this 4-step process, well, that isn't actually the final goal of teaching writing. It's really just the training wheels.
I mean, after all, you don't want a student to have to formally brainstorm every single time they need to write a simple email, right? The ultimate goal is for these steps to become so deeply integrated, so practiced that they just become second nature.
And that is true fluency. It's the point where a writer can move seamlessly from idea to organization to a polished sentence without even consciously thinking about the steps anymore. The whole process becomes an unconscious habit, which frees up the mind to focus purely on the ideas themselves.
So, it seems like the process approach has finally found that sweet spot, that balance between rules and creativity. It's logical, it's effective, and it mirrors how our minds actually work. But, we have to ask, has the pendulum truly stopped swinging for good? Or, in an age of AI writers and totally new forms of communication, is it maybe, just maybe, already beginning to swing towards something new?